My name is Karen Brasee, and I live in Grand Island, Nebraska. I was raised up in northeast Nebraska, was born on a farm about 7 miles from Wisner, Nebraska.
And what were the conditions on the farm when you were growing up?
I was a depression baby, and so consequently there wasn't a whole lot of material wealth, but there was a wealth of conditions where you were happy and you weren't wanting for anything. And I can remember the only time I can remember that it affected me was I went to gather eggs. I dropped the bucket on the way back from the hen house, and my mother cried because that's what she used to buy groceries on Saturday night at the Farmers Union. So, but otherwise, I wasn't affected by it particularly.
Mm-hmm. Did it ever come up when the girls were here talking about some of them that grew up in little? You didn't.
We didn't talk about where they came from, and I don't know why. Occasionally, when we were doing a square, there was some discussion of the lion, and that was always the showstopper when they discussed the fact that her grandparents had been evidently attacked by a lion. And so, but I don't exactly know why we didn't. But it seemed to be an intrusion, and unless they were going to talk to us about it, we didn't want to pry, I guess, is what happened.
Yeah, that really interests me because it seems like that farm background and even experiences like you say, and also the unintrusiveness that they weren't feeling forced. Both of those helped.
They have a peacefulness inside that I find to be absolutely amazing. They don't seem to be particularly, I've been around teenagers a lot, but they don't seem to be particularly upset by any new situation. They seem to have an inner peace that I find to be just amazing. They seem to deal with everything, and not in a way that they seem uncomfortable with it. They just kind of stand back for a bit and watch, and then once they understand it, off they go, and they get involved. I thought it was amazing.
Can you tell me where we are?
Oh, we're in the Fonda House at Stuhr Museum, and the Henry Fonda paid to have this house where he was born moved from Grand Island out here, and it has been maintained by a friend of theirs called Ruth McCauley. Over the years, I've done lots of programs in this house. The Christmas walk is I'm always here for that. We once cooked turkey in the oven, and one of the national magazines came and took a Christmas at the Fonda House. So it has a dear place in my heart, and I love it. And it's a charming building on a very interesting museum.
And this is the space also where you worked with the girls. This is
yes.
Actually
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Of course. This is where we worked with the girls and sat around and sewed and cut and sewed, I should say, and made their blocks. And it was sat on the porch a couple of days that it was warm. It was very pleasant, and I think they enjoyed. I think they enjoyed being out here. I think they enjoyed the contrast with, as opposed to being in a school, or this was seemed to me that they found it a very relaxing place to be.
Of course, none of us could possibly know, but what do you think Henry Fonda would have thought of this?
I think he'd been very pleased. I think Fonda would have liked this a lot, because he came from an immigrant family, and he thought it was important to repeat your history, or I should say keep your history, and then history is only useful if you learn from it, and if you repeat it. And that's, I think, part of what we're doing now with the girls.
Can you tell me also a little bit about the museum itself and what you understand of these principles?
I have worked on this museum for about 50-some years. Leo Stuhr.
Yeah, if you can say at the Stuhr Museum.
At the Stuhr Museum.
At the top. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I've been around the Stuhr Museum for about 50 years, and Leo Stuhr had a dream to retain, again, our history. I am really a history lover, and so anything that pertains to that I find very interesting, and I think he would be very pleased with the uses that we've put to it.
What do you understand his dream was? And if you could say, like, Leo Stuhr's dream for the
I
museum
think
was?
that probably his dream was to keep a record of how this area was settled. I was just reminded this morning that the Pawnee came first, and we have that. And then, as far as I know, the railroads came next. And then the farm communities spread out from there, and the town builders came then. And so to retain the history of this area, and this is one of the finest, I think, examples of how history has been retained, so people know what their roots are.
And we were discussing before just this idea that here in the project that you worked on with these girls, here you were with these newest immigrants in the houses of the oldest immigrants.
That's true.
Okay.
It is very true, and that's life is a circle, and I think we completed a circle here, using the facilities of the earliest immigrants and sharing it with the newest immigrants, and I think that's part of what makes everybody so relaxed, I guess.
Yeah, again, this idea really appeals to me because I'm very big. This is the hippie in me, but it's like the vibrations that you feel.
I think that is very true. I believe those vibrations. I guess I feel that when I'm out here. It seems to be a pleasant place and a relaxing place. And yes, you feel those vibrations.
Why do you think it's a pleasant or relaxing place? What?
I think that obviously the home was restored, and they have put it to good use. So I think that makes it good vibes, as they say.
Very good. Another thing that's interested me is how many of the women that have helped with this have not only like some farm background or rural background that maybe allowed them to get closer to the girls, but also like a lot of those girls wanted to be one of three things: a doctor or nurse, a teacher of some kind, or a lawyer. And it's very interesting to me with you and your background, the nursing or related to that, and your son being a lawyer. With Kay, she was a teacher, and you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it's just
a
like
profession.
I might ask you just some of your, what was your dream growing up, if it was to be a nurse or to be a doctor or whatever.
It was.
And how? Okay, so I'm going to ask you that, and I might steer you a little bit
Okay.
when we get started.
Okay.
So what was your dream as a child? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I did want to become a nurse.
And if I can ask you, when I was a child.
When I was a child, I did want to be a nurse. I had an aunt who was, and it just seemed like a good way to help people. And that was instilled in us when we were young, that to do something for somebody else was a good thing. And so that's the way I went, was into the medical field.
And did you see that in some of the dreams these girls had? Something?
Yes, definitely. The dreams that they had were to be professionals. And I think as a person looking ahead, a profession is a way to become self-sufficient and to be able to either go on and help someone else, and that seems to be part of their culture, that they go back, because Eunice, one of the Sudanese that I met, goes back and helps out in his home country. And so I think that part of that must be instilled in them. I don't know. I didn't really, as I say, we mostly sewed, and so I didn't really get into their background a whole lot, other than just listening to what they had to say.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's part of
Which
why it
was
works
sharp,
too, because
I
they
think.
didn't feel somebody was prying or.
Yeah.
I'm curious to just your own memories of the experience. If there's something that stands out, like moments that were special for you, or.
The memory that I think I will have for the rest of my life is the fact that I met these people who I am completely fascinated with. I had no knowledge of any Sudanese. I had knowledge of Sudanese because there are some at our church. There are some that live on the way to the grocery store, and a couple of women that I have in the wintertime asked if they maybe wanted a ride rather than walk home in the snow when they first came. And they were hesitant. They are very shy, very retiring until they get to know you. Found that out with the girls to be true. Once they get to know you, they can just say whatever they think will surprise you, as any teenager will, or they will connect. They really do. They like hugs. But it's, I think this is something I will think about for the rest of my life, this experience. It has been a fantastic experience.
With any of the girls, were there any moments in particular that were a little precious for you or surprised?
Well, I think Nyamush is the one that I saw afterwards. I didn't get as close to them as Ruth Campbell did, but as far as at a later date. But I was at a meeting, and Nyamush came in, and she was serving. And I saw her, and she saw me, and we both were so pleased to see each other again. And that was fun. That was great fun. I had never been able to really connect with the Sudanese population, as I say, on any personal level until this. And now I feel that whenever I see any of them, I speak to them and connect with them, and have had a conversation now with two of the women that are at our church. And I headed a sewing group there for years. So we've now invited them to see if they want to join our sewing group, because obviously this is a facility that they have learned at a young age, because these girls did so well, they couldn't have just picked that all up in the 10 minutes or something that we gave them instruction. That has to be an innate ability or something that they've watched or seen in their past. So those are things that I learned about them. And my dream is to see that this program goes on around the United States so that other people can share in what we enjoyed. We'll see as to how far. I know Peggy talks about taking it to South Carolina and starting the program there. And she and I were talking about the fact that it just could sweep across the country. So you better get yourself ready. Or Sam and Bruce. Right.
Actually, now that you've moved over towards Peggy, can you tell me if you knew anything about her before she came, if you remember when you first saw her, what your thoughts were?
I didn't know anything about her before she came, and that's probably because I just don't study quilting in that depth, because obviously she has a national reputation. And when I meet a quilter, there's a certain amount of, you don't have to get acquainted with a quilter, with a fellow quilter. So I was most anxious to listen to what she had to say and listen to her talk about her experiences. She's obviously had a lot more in the quilting field than I have, and so it was a natural affinity for me.
When you were in the space, because she was going from room to room and place to place,
yes.
But how did you see her interacting with the girls, and what effect? How do you think this would have worked without her, and what did she contribute by her? And if you can say Peggy Hartwell.
I think having Peggy Hartwell was a coup. Okay? I think without her, it would have lacked something. I think we could have filled in the gaps, maybe. But to have her and have her relationship with the girls, when they saw her, there was an instant affinity. That helped. And I think that she is so used to working with young people that she had no problem whatsoever just walking around and spotting something that maybe needed to be brought forward as far as the girls talking about it, or that needed to be rearranged slightly or something. She was excellent at that. And I think that if you had a replication of the program, that would be important, that you had someone like Peggy. Right.
I'm going to kind of backtrack on a couple things here. I was just following that because it was going in its own direction. If you, and this is reiterating some of what you said, but just to reiterate the idea that, well, you know, I was a nurse for a time, my son is a lawyer, and some of these girls have those same dreams. And do you think they can achieve those dreams? And how realistic do you think that is?
Oh, John, I think that dreams are what makes us who we are. And if you follow your dreams, yes, I think they can. But like, you know, my job is a banker. It isn't something I ever thought about, and probably never wished for, actually. But it is possible, because it needed to be done. I needed to do it. And so then you just go ahead and find out how you're going to do that. Yes, I do think they can follow their dreams. I think anybody can, actually. If you're willing to give enough in order to have. It depends on how important it is. Some people just say they have a dream and aren't willing to live through it to get there. And then I think it's possible, absolutely.
And you know, also, because I love the story which you told before, but I would love a little more detail with it about Nyamuch serving, because it was at your church, if I remember correctly?
It was at the Presbyterian
and
church.
And also,
right.
when you told me the first time, you mentioned that while it was happening, these friends of yours around the room were kind of looking at you like...
Well,
so if you tell it all again like a fresh
I
story,
hate to bring all of those things up.
Well,
there are some things that...
in general...
That's right. And, you know, when you talk about Peggy and et cetera, we know that made the girls comfortable. That's right. That day that I saw her, I was the only one that knew her in the room. And there are probably 65 white women, if you want to put it that way. And Nyamuch is a little darker than they are. And so consequently, people looked and wondered how in the world I could know her. I'm sure that you can tell by people's expression as to what's going through their minds. And I will also say that I love doing that. That's one of the things that I love to do. And so it was fun. And then somebody did ask me after a while as to how I knew her. And then I had the opportunity to tell them about the quilt project, which wasn't well known in the group either. So our press this week, I had that article, that has done so much to bring this project to the forefront. And so I think it needed to be explained to the community as to what was happening. And I think we can thank the Independent for helping us do that.
Oh, that's really good. That full story.
That's completely
like that whole...
non sequitur, but whatever.
Yeah, but there's stuff in there that's very important with all of that. Let me look ahead here too. Just a second. Also, something I would like to ask you about is you are. Let me think for a second before I say this. Outside of Irene and Freda would be another. But you are about the only one of the women that was actively involved that actually had a history with the Abbott Sisters project or knew very much about the sisters. And
right.
If you could share your thoughts with, you know, how the Abbotts might have felt. I mean, apropos, I asked you about how Henry Fonda might have felt about it, but why this is something kind of special, that this is their hometown.
It's... I guess I never expected to end up in their hometown.
In who?
In the Abbott sisters' hometown. When I was
I'm sorry again. I told you.
No. That's all right.
Do it from clean, so they've got it clean.
I don't think I ever expected to spend my life, my married life, in Edith and Abbott's hometown. when I was in college, social services was my first major. And I decided there wasn't enough money to pay for hardly anything if I went into that project. And so, but I had studied her, she and her sister, when I was in college. So when I came to Grand Island, the first thing that happened was they decided to take the house down. Now, I'm not a person that goes and lays on front steps, but I nearly did. I called everybody I knew and could not get the house saved. We did get the room out here at Stuhr Museum, which is a replicated room from there, from the Abbott house. But it was sad, and still is to me, that we let that house go. Because I realized what they had done for this country, and I didn't think anybody here probably realized that. And I did a program at the Y and read Edith Abbott's works and portrayed her. And then I met a young man by the name of John Sorensen who believed in the Abbott sisters also. And that was absolutely magic. I couldn't believe all the ideas that he had to keep their name in the forefront. I worked for a while with Children's Services in Lincoln, Carl and I did, because they were portraying the Abbott sisters. Now, I don't know if you, John, had anything to do with that, but I think you did at times. Whether you did with the inception of it, I didn't. I don't know. But anyway, I have watched you over the last 17 years, probably, something like that. And I think that's kind of like having a dream. Well, I think that has been your dream, to bring this all to fruition. I had no clue that you would accomplish it necessarily, but I'm certainly pleased that you did.
Do you see a connection between their dreams and ideals and this project?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is the kind of thing that they had in mind, to make the lives of the immigrants better. And if you keep them isolated and nobody knows the immigrants, their lives are not going to improve. They're going to stay a separate part of a community. And what we all need to do is integrate as much as possible. And that's about as far as I'll go with that subject also.
Okay, that's all right. That's okay. Wink is as good as a nod.
Okay.
Do you know much about their work at Hull House? Because it's occurred
I
to
know
me,
some about their work
they
at
did a lot
Hull.
of kind of art projects there with the immigrants.
They did?
I didn't think of that at the time, but if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't know that money was a big starter for them, as it is for anybody that has a project. They had a terrible time getting started with Hull House, and I can't think who the person was that paid for it.
Well, Jane Addams was.
Or Jane Addams probably was the one who provided some of it, and possibly the Abbott sisters themselves through their father. I don't know that to be true, but no, it was. That was the place that they started their ideas. They started making their ideas work, I guess, would be more appropriate.
Let me ask you also, we were talking to Kay about it, and you correct me if I'm misremembering this, but when we had that meeting at the administration building and showed the film footage the first time,
yes,
I recall at the end of it, Kay said something like, this has been a life-changing experience for me.
That's exactly right.
And if I remember correctly, you and I were out to dinner or something after that, and you said something. I'm going to say what I think you said, and then you can tell it as you remember it more accurately. Is you said something, as I recall it, of like, we're at that meeting and saw that film, and Kay said, this has been a life-changing experience. And at first I thought, oh, come on, that's a bit much. Then when I thought about it, does that make sense? Is that
yes,
how I have it?
Yes.
Can you tell me that from...
That her saying that this was a life-changing experience, for one thing.
And if I could ask you, say, Kay Grimminger, one of the women working on
for
that.
one thing, Kay Grimminger is so talented and has so many things in her life, I couldn't imagine that she was having a life-changing experience. And I didn't think about it that way. But it has become, it's grown like Topsy to me, sort of. I mean, that may be not the right way to express it, but this project started with, as I recall, having an Abbott Sisters Day in Nebraska, an organized Abbott Sisters Day. Now, it has progressed to a book or two or three. It has progressed to a film. It has now had a quilt, which is just an absolutely wonderful mix of their ideas and the young people from Sudan working through it and connecting with them in that way. Yes, it is a life-changing experience. I'll be thinking about this for a long time and enjoying the whole experience. Always have, John.
Great.
Always have.
Let me ask you too, and if you don't see it that way, that's fine. When you were seeing the finished quilt, actually, that's a good way to put it. When you really saw the finished quilt, when did you first see the finished quilt?
When it came down at the library.
That was the first. Okay,
that was the very first time.
After all of your background with it, how it struck you, what you thought about it. Okay.
I should say, first of all, seeing the quilt, the first time was in the newspaper, in the article. I was absolutely amazed at what we had put together out here on the porch of the Henry Fonda house. I didn't think it would have that impact. And then when I saw it at the library, it was like, oh, look at that. And I was part of that. That's great. I'm thrilled to have been a part of it.
When you looked at it more closely that day when you got there, were there any, I mean, I love all those panels, but there's still two or three of them that for me are a little
The
more...
red dress, of course I read this, I heard the story of Peggy Hartwell talking to her about, was it Cho?
I'm not sure, I had to hold on a second. Are you coming in, Leslie?
It was Cho.
It was...
Yeah, it was Cho.
Was she?
I heard squeaking.
Yeah, so maybe she was just going...
Hello?
I think we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
When I was there listening by the table when she was talking to her about the red dress and her mother. And
yeah, if you can say...
Names.
Yeah, if you can say when Peggy
when Peggy Hartwell was talking to Cho.
And again, I'm going to start you at the beginning and we'll tell the whole thing through. Okay.
Let me see, where do we start? Okay. Ask me the question again.
Okay. Is there any of the quilt pieces that the children did? I'm
Right.
sure you like them all,
Right,
but is there
right.
maybe one that's a little special for you?
The special quilt piece or block would be the one that Peggy and Cho did with the red dress. That one, I was there when they were discussing it, and she was saying that that was the dress that her mother wore, and that, to me, was a poignant moment. And I got to know the girls, see what had come before, and and watched Peggy Hartwell interact with them. So yes, that was important. But the whole impact of the quilt, Peggy Hartwell does some beautiful quilts, but I don't think even Peggy would say that this wasn't right up there with hers. It is amazing that the whole thing came together like that. So I'm thrilled with it. I hope it tours across the United States and everybody calls you and says, how'd you get this thing started? What do we do?
Very good. Just a second here. Do either of you have anything special that you'd like to ask, or?
Well, I was just thinking about when you showed up, you and I showed up at Material Girl, and when you met Peggy for the first time.
That is where I met her, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And
I didn't even remember.
And you brought out that quilt.
Yeah, the wedding or...
Oh, a wedding ring quilt.
Yes.
And as soon as you sort of unfurled the quilt, you and Peggy had an instant connection over
a quilt. Yes. Yes. And that's what I was... Quilters have an instant connection. I didn't remember that at the quilt shop was where I first met her. But to me, I knew that I was not in her league, so to speak, when she started picking out the fabrics. I mean, the fabrics that were used in that quilt were absolutely phenomenal. Peggy realized that those young girls would relate to bright colors rather than the pastels that we tend to use occasionally. The other thing that just came to me, I have not met anybody by the name of Chol or Nyamush prior to this project. There's just so many things that I think about that have been special and have helped to make it all of us understand what was happening. And that quilt was just that it all worked.
One thing I wonder about too, and you're the only person that would have this experience, is when we were at the zoo, your granddaughter, who's the same age almost, or
Yes.
just about as some of these
Yes.
kids, was running around. I just wonder if anything was in your head seeing those.
Those are the kind of experiences that you hope to expose your grandchildren to be with, and that was one thing why I was happy to have them come along, to be with the girls, and to see them in the same setting. They're very different, obviously, than Ren's schoolmates for the most part. I don't think there's any Sudanese in her school. And so that she said, "Grandma, they're so dark." I said, "Yes, honey, Sudan, when you come from the Sudan, they have a very deep, beautiful glow to their skin." And she said, "That's right. They do kind of glow, don't they?" And I said, "Yep, they do."
That's beautiful. Could you say also, because I think we could pull it around the other side, just to say, when the kids took the zoo trip, I wanted to come along and I brought my granddaughter, Ren,
Oh,
who's about their
yes.
age. That'll give a little
Yes.
setup for it.
Okay. When they decided to go to the zoo, I did think that it would be a good opportunity for my grandchildren, Ren and Lincoln, to come along and interact with the girls, and because they probably are just like I was when I started this project, not having a great exposure to the girls from the Sudan. So it was a great opportunity, and they enjoyed it.
That's okay that we've got that at the end there. It all would fit in. Let's see here. I thought you were shy and you weren't going to say anything. Because you said so many beautiful things.
I can talk to you.
Okay.
We've talked a long time.
That's
So
sure.
as long as I just have to, I
Yeah,
don't
that's-
know that there was anything brilliant, but I just,
Oh, there was excellent. I mean,
you just
gave-
talk about how you think.
Yeah, there's
what
some
you think.
phenomenal moments there.